Hi, guys. Welcome to Adulting Conversations with the Jessies. I am Katunge, here with
Jesse.
the Jessie
The
of
Jessie.
Jessies. Karibuni sana. Today, our podcast is going to be about relationships. Relationships are central to who we are and how we function in life. So, our topic today is going to be a bit unique in terms of how we're going to be addressing relationships. And we're going to talk about relationships in two contexts. We are calling them the Cornerstone relationships versus Capstone relationships. And we're going to kind of give you a definition for each. And then from there, we'll kind of get into a bit of a discussion. So, Mr. Jesse,
Yeah.
what do you think about relationships nowadays? Before we get into what cornerstones and capstones are.
Wow. Relationship these days. Working or not working, or somewhere in between.
The landscape of relationships nowadays, what does that look like to you?
Wow. It's very well, considering the century we are living in, it's very 50-50. And there's a lot of sharing is caring. Well, from the relationships I've seen out here. Some not so much, whereby it's, you give some, I take some, you take some, I give some, and they still manage to find a way to work around that. Yeah, that's briefly, that's what I can say off the top of my head.
So, do you think generally relationships are working, or do you think they're generally not working?
Well, from the friends that, well, you and I have commonly share, we have seen working relationships. So, and the ones that are not working, I've only heard of a few. Wow, I've heard of quite a number. I've heard of quite a number. And we can say the ratio of working relationships versus the ones that are not working is, the working relationships are like 30%, and then 70% are the ones that are not working. Also considering how relationships are generally driven through society these days, other than it is two of you, and so two of you have to make it work because you're the two who actually decided to be in the relationship. It is not the world that has brought you together. Like, actually, to give you a perfect example, my boy, we're actually talking about how there's this movie called it's called what? It's called Sinners. And so we were watching. I'd watched a video of Michael B and this other lady. She's actually engaged. I forget her name, but she stars in this series called Hawkeye, the Marvel franchise series. And they were in an interview, multiple interviews, and there's a way, because they get along so well, right? It seems that the media is trying to propagate that because they look so good together, means that they can be together. But this chick is actually engaged to a football player, an American football player. So I was like, hey, so I asked my boy, why is it that the media is convincing us that these guys can be in a relationship? They have work chemistry, which everyone at one point has, but it's not a relationship, right?
Right.
And that's why I bring it back to my initial opening statement of, so society has really found a way to mix and match people that aren't necessarily together. And if you're not self-aware, or your spouse is not self-aware about, is not aware about the entirety of what is happening around the two of you, you can get lost. And hence why some relationships aren't working, because of how the society driven. Yeah.
Well, that's an interesting perspective. I just to add on to that, I think that there's also no, apart from society being society driven, there's this different presumptions about how a relationship should be. Uh, like in a relationship, the guy should 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the chick should 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You know what I mean? So that these almost preset conditions and expectations that sometimes people come into a relationship with, that when they get to now the, let me say, the daily grind of working on that relationship, some of those things don't work. And not because they are, the things that are not working are bad. You know what I mean? Like, it's just the context of those two people. Like, you're talking about two people being in a relationship and them being the ones who need to define that relationship for themselves. I feel like there's also expectations on that end. For example, if you and I get married, it means that in the home I have these duties, and in the home you have these duties. And sometimes those need to be reworked based on the context of a relationship. Growing up, for example, I had two schools of thought. One was once you get married, you're in charge of the house and everything domestic is in your docket. The end. And that was what, as a child, that's kind of what we grew up knowing. And then you get to your teens, and then there is no, 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 oh, women's liberation and independent women, and the whole thing began as, fair education, equal opportunities in education and equal opportunities in employment. And that just spiraled out into some crazy competition between, it's like anything you can do, I can do better, because like I'm a woman and all.
Yeah.
And so this independent woman now, as an adult, is clashing with the traditional understanding of what makes a relationship work. So you get into a relationship expecting that, okay, here's a bit of my background. I grew up in a home whereby both my parents worked and they both traveled for work. Meaning that if my mom has traveled for work, it's my dad who's taking care of us. Just took up the whole role in the home. We didn't really have a lot of house helps in the house. Like, there was a season we had one. But for the most part, when mom traveled, it was dad in charge of the home. When dad traveled, it was mom in charge of the home. So I grew up understanding that in a family context, anybody can do anything. And I was raised by a dad who says, you got two hands, you got, brains in your head. I mean, you're not physically or mentally impaired or limited in any way. So work is for whoever has hands and a brain, basically. There wasn't that whole thing of cooking, it will be done by the girls, and then these are the tasks, maybe like, I don't know,
heavy lifting
at it will be done by the boys. It was everybody will cook and everybody will do the heavy lifting, And my dad was very particular about this being not a thing about women's roles or men's roles, but about acquiring the skills necessary to survive in life. My parents actually both said, in life, much as we all want to be in a relationship and we all want to be married, it's not a guarantee. That's the one thing life will never guarantee you, So are you going to now live a diminished life because you're not married or you're not in a relationship? And so if you end up not being in a relationship or not married, maybe You might have wanted to get married when you're young,
Mm.
maybe in your 20s, or as soon as you got out of uni, or as soon as you got out of high school. Maybe you wanted to get married young. What if that person or that ideal person doesn't show up then? What do you do? Are you going to sit around and wait? No, you're going to live your life. You're going to build a life for yourself. And this person, whenever they find you, whenever you find them, you'll already be living your life. You know what I mean? So you're not sitting on your life waiting for someone to come so that you start living it. And so as a result, for us, there was no real definition of gender roles or work for girls or work for guys. And so when we got into relationships, our expectations, I think even with my sister, we discussed that. It's like our expectation of relationship is so different based on how we were raised. And we'd sit with our other girlfriends and they'd think that our expectations are so, I know, like we have these weird ideologies, like how is a relationship supposed to be sustainable like that? Kuna kazi ya wanawake na kazi ya wanaume, because again, that was their context of being raised. But there's getting into now relationships when you have that kind of mindset is very challenging, because you realize that that's a minority group. You're in the minority whereby in the home there are no gender roles. Everyone must contribute to making the home work. And so for us, then relationships were modeled as a partnership. And there wasn't, my folks didn't argue much. I mean, they probably did,
but
honestly.
y'all, I
we
mean,
never saw it. Let's
Ninja,
put it
they
as
argued
children.
with
I know they were
intellectually.
they were very discreet they're very discreet in their disagreements, or very respectful and everything. And I think even us, when we would fight, that is something they always would reiterate, like, fine, fight, argue, disagree, but you cannot be disrespectful to one another. You don't hurl insults at one another. You, yes, feel angry, but take a pause and think about what is the issue that is causing that anger. Then talk about that issue. So when you get into a family setting, or when you get into a relationship setting, then you look out for one another. That's really the whole point of being in a relationship. So everybody has their own shared dreams. You have shared dreams, you have individual dreams, you have shared goals, you have individual goals. But in a sense, you look out for one another. So much as you've moved away from being cared for by your parents, now you get into a situation where you care for one another, because again, human society thrives when we are looking out for one another. It's not just, okay, now you're grown and now you don't need anybody. You know what I mean? You need people looking out for you. You need people you need people in your corner, basically. And so the person that you choose to pass on, the individual who becomes your personal person, you now get into a situation where you're looking out for one another. What does that mean? That one does not rely overly and unnecessarily on the other. You know what I mean? Like, okay, fine. I think we've pegged a lot of our relationships on income, and money does allow us to get on and get by in life. But that is not the basis of a relationship. What makes a relationship work is not money. What makes a relationship work is shared values. It is shared goals and dreams. It is having gosh, I really don't like this, but it is having a common vision. Vision and purpose. People, I hear you. Shout out. It is having a mwelekeo together now. And that means that everybody does what they can within their capacity to get us there. So the relationship, and I think I've mentioned this in a previous podcast, where the relationship itself has a life of its own that is separate from you as individuals. And that relationship needs to be nurtured. That relationship space needs to be nurtured. You like this person likes you. And so since you like each other mutually, you need to preserve that space where you have respect for one another, where you continually still enjoy each other's company, you enjoy each other's friendship, the quirks that make this other person who they are, the things that drew you to this person, those things must be protected. Because you see, if you're not being, and and you protect those things through what? Through kindness, through empathy, through compassion, through mutual support, through understanding, through seeing the other person as a human being just as much as you are. And I think this one specifically, I'm saying that specifically with chicks, because I find that what I'm hearing out there is that when a guy comes, he has to do this and has to do this and has to do this. So he stops being a person and takes on a role. He stops being a person and starts being a role. To some degree, it also happens where guys look on now the chick as a role. Like, for example, I have married you, you are my wife. As a wife, you're supposed to. And so he looks at her through this perspective of wife and not human being. Therefore, then his expectations of what you should do as a wife supersede who the person is as a woman, as a female, as a human female. You know what I mean? And I think the same goes also for chicks, where you're looking at this guy as my husband should. And I'm like, this is also a human being, so can we start seeing each other as human beings?
I think maybe it's taking out the titles, because psychological programming in that sense, considering how much the number of generations most generations have been through, is that immediately you take on this title, this becomes your job description, right? And in that context, then you automatically, even psychologically, lay upon yourself responsibilities and expectations maybe the other person doesn't have. Exactly. So when you removing that title, I feel will change a lot, right? Because I feel like this trend really works, whereby when you're calling someone your person, is your person, right? So this is your private person. I feel like that has a more relaxed kind of approach to it, instead of saying this is my husband or this is my wife, because automatically it changes a lot.
It actually does.
It changes a lot, and it completely, even people can distance themselves from you when you actually, if you don't say your status in life, people are cool with you, but now mention your status. Hey, you are ostracized. And it's psychological. It really happens psychologically. But I think remove the title, put something that fits, that works, and then you don't feel the pressure for anything. Because the whole point of being with someone is so that you are able to continuously build something together that doesn't feel like you're supposed to seek approval from the world around you. Yeah.
I think that's also true even in the context where, okay, fine, you've gotten married, hooray, you're husband and wife. But I think why I think a lot of relationships sometimes lose their luster, that shininess of when we were dating, is because of that, where you see someone through the eyes of a job description. You stop seeing them and you start seeing the job description and what they're supposed to be fulfilling. And even if you say, this is my husband, honestly, they're not a role. Let's just agree on that. A person is not a role. I mean, even in an office setting, a person is not a role. They fulfill a role and they do have tasks and responsibilities, but they are not the tasks and the responsibilities. And I feel like even in employment settings, that really becomes a thing where it's the CFO, it's the CEO,
It's the COO.
it is the COO, it is the HR, it is the, I mean, we are talking to each other and interacting through titles. And then you go to some situations. Okay, so I think both of us, in a sense, have been privileged to work in situations whereby titles were not the titles are not the thing that define how a company is running.
Yeah.
So you'd address the boss by their name, Mr. So and so, or Mrs. So and so, or Miss so and so, Mr. So. Like, you don't address them by, sasa chief
title.
engineer, And I find it completely disorienting. Like, for me, when someone is calling someone daktari, I'm like, what's this? Who's this? Oh, this is daktari. I'm like that's the name on their ID, daktari. No, they're a doctor. I'm like, oh, okay. So what's their name? What's their actual name? And a lot of people actually don't know each other's names. And I think because we address each other through titles and job descriptions and the roles that we play at work, we also don't see each other as human beings. And so you think that so and so, because they're a CEO, they're a better human being than so and so who's a cleaner. But when you look at their characters, the CEO could really have a terrible, like, difficult to work with type of person, and the cleaner is the one who is more relatable,
Yeah.
And I think in a sense, when we are able to address each other as human beings and not through titles or roles that we play, then we've already created a foundation for healthy interaction. Which then brings us to another phase of getting into relationships. So we earlier in this podcast said that we're going to be talking about, or rather we're going to define what a capstone relationships and what a cornerstone relationship is. So a capstone relationship, what we're seeing a lot of today, whereby somebody gets on in life, I'm going to pursue, I'm going to finish my primary school, I'm going to go for higher education, I'm going to get my first degree, second degree, master's, PhD, I'm going to get into this career path, I'm going to rise through the ranks, I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4. So you have a lot of career and your ambition things, and then I'm going to, buy land or invest in this and the other and the other and the other and the other and the other. And then when I'm done all that, or when I reach a certain place, or when I reach a certain place economically, and I have a certain kind of income, and I've accumulated certain resources, and I've accumulated certain investments, and kind of like cushioned myself, I guess, for the future, then I'll start looking for a mate to share all this with, and so you find this mate, all right, who's also come through the same channel. We come together as, okay, this is now like kind of like the tip of the iceberg, hence the word capstone, right? It's like the tip of it's what's crowning all my achievements. Like, look, it's a relationship. Now my whole legacy is complete. So a relationship becomes a point of achievement. It's another goal in life, the same way you have a goal of becoming whatever it is in your career. The relationship aspect in a capstone situation is that it's another point of achievement. It's another goal to achieve. All right. So keep that in your mind. And then we're going to talk about what a cornerstone relationship is. A cornerstone relationship is where an individual can see that trajectory. Okay, I'm going to achieve this, and I'm going to have this career, and I'm going to get these lands and investments, and you have your financial goals, you have your maybe goals for family and all these things. But the difference is that the relationship is the foundation for all of that working.
All those achievements.
Yeah. So it means that you already have your goals and your dreams and your plans in mind. But then you're saying that I'm going to get here to this place if I have a partner with me.
Right.
And so all these dreams do not work without my person.
Yeah.
So what happens is that in that kind of setup is you begin from the ground building together. Now, earlier I had mentioned how we were told relationship is not a guarantee, so keep living your life. Yes, of course, keep living your life. But if you are fortunate enough to be able to get into a relationship before you achieve all your achievements, then interestingly, statistics show that relationships that build together. So I have my dreams and ambitions, my person has their dreams and ambitions, but we get in na tunajengana. Research has shown that cornerstone relationships, i.e., the relationship is the cornerstone for the future you build, rather than capstone, which is another marker in your future, another target to achieve in your future. Research has shown that cornerstone relationships actually last longer. They are actually healthier. They actually produce more in terms of financially, especially after COVID, everybody now has a side hustle. I mean, like Trump is a billionaire, but now he's side hustling as a president, right? It's like everybody has more than one source of income everywhere. But you find that in cornerstone relationships, what you acquire over your lifetime in terms of finance or investment or wealth, you actually acquire more. You actually build more. When people start, let's say in their 20s or 30s, by their 80s, they have more than those people who got married later on as a capstone situation in their 80s. So you look at people who built from the ground up together in the relationship versus those who first built as individuals and then came together. The accumulated wealth in cornerstone relationships is actually higher than that in capstone relationships.
Is that so?
Yeah, it is so.
Wow.
And here's an interesting fact. Men in cornerstone relationships actually live longer than men in capstone relationships.
Statistically proven.
Statistics are there.
Okay.
We shall get the statistics and attach to
Yeah.
If actually, here's a resource you guys could actually check out. The Global Peace Foundation. This is not a sponsored slot, by the way. This is where I got my statistics from, actually. From the Global Peace Foundation. Check out their website. Look for the info that they have out there on families. And they have a lot of information on families and building families and stable families and healthy families. But that's where I got my statistics from, that men in cornerstone relationships actually live longer and healthier. People in cornerstone relationships actually accumulate more wealth over their lifetime than people in capstone relationships. And interestingly enough, families that, i.e., you're with your person and you decide to have children, families that start off on a cornerstone situation are actually healthier, and children in those families are healthier emotionally and developmentally healthier than children in capstone relationships. And we shall discuss a lot more on this in other podcasts, I'm sure, as time allows. But the question then to you guys as we kind of wind this up is, what kind of relationship are you in? What kind of relationship did you envision, or do you envision yourself getting in light of your overall well-being? I know there's a lot of questions that are going to come up. We've talked about so many things here. So just, throw in your questions in the comments. we're happy to interact and kind of find responses to these questions together. I think when we analyze the health, if we could have a health meter of relationships in the world today, I think we're not doing very well as a species. I think there's a lot of trouble everywhere in every continent, honestly. I think it's largely driven by initially it was driven by society and culture, but throw in social media into the mix, and now you have it's just a cesspool of all kinds of strange, and I mean, it's not even a mix and match. It's just a lot of confusion. I think a lot of people are very confused also about healthy relationships, about what makes a relationship work, about, okay, you get married, gender roles and stuff, because we're in a world that is kind of deconstructing what gender is, and what sexuality is. And so, of course, I know that all of this will be, I hope that you'll all take it with a grain of salt. This is a perspective of
just a perspective,
two individuals sharing their own experience. As we explore further on Cornerstone and Capstone relationships and relationships in general, and what the world is come to, we hope that we can just give our input to the whole process. I think there's a lot going on, and much as we are looking for the raw, uncensored, and what brutal truth. What else? What else are people looking for?
Yeah, raw, uncensored, brutal truth.
They're looking for that, cutthroat. But we are asking, to what end? Who does it serve? And does it make us better? Or does it continue to propagate our biases and stereotypes? Does it continue to fuel our personal and accumulated rage against one another? Does it continue to feed the fire of discontent and continual disruption of healthy relationships? That's the question we're asking. So basically, even as you think through your own current or envisioned relationship, it's to think through, when you think about the paradigm of what your ideal relationship is, think through, is it Cornerstone? Is it Capstone? As you think about the goals for your own future and maybe the person you would like to have that future with. Are you building together, or are you building separately and then hopefully join up together uko mbele? When you think about being with this person, are you thinking about them as a role that they're fulfilling, or are you seeing them as a person who's walking with you through the journey of life? Send us your comments.
Yeah, definitely. So stay tuned for our next episode. It's been real. Catch you guys on the next one.
Bye.
Bye.